Hello and welcome to Who's Your Daddy? I'm Marlon Abrahams and thank you for joining us again. Well, a lot has been said over the centuries about the importance of the formative years. I think it was a Jesuit monk in the 15th century who said, "Show me a child at the age of 7 and I'll show you the adult." Well, tonight we're discussing the importance of choosing the right preschool and school. There have been many horror stories about things that can go wrong in preschool and school in general. Recent headlines include, and I'm sure you remember, group sex at high schools, tragic accidents at preschools, teachers abusing their authority, etc., etc. Here are a few comments from my Facebook page. Tanya van der Walt says, "I took my kid out of a preschool after arriving in the middle of the day and finding a lot of small kids around a swimming pool with absolutely no adult supervision. I told them I wasn't bringing my kid back, and they still argued with me about how I had to give 2 months' notice. I threatened to report them to the authorities, and they dropped the matter." She says, "There were various other things that also bothered me about the school, like my child was never a big eater, but he always came home starving. In a way, I sort of felt guilty for not actually reporting them to the authorities at the time." Sumanda Maritz, who's a fellow columnist at Parent24 with me, says, "I had my 4-month-old son at a creche who charged me a full day rate because I dropped him off and picked him up just a half an hour later than the regular half-day hours. Then a little girl of almost 1 year old died in his classroom from asphyxiation in her sleep. I took my son out of the school and was told that I had to give notice for a month and that I would forfeit my deposit for not giving notice on the first day of the month. It was the first week of the month." Scary stuff indeed. Well, as usual, just a quick reminder not to miss my columns on parent24.com, samen.co.za, and of course each Saturday in the Saturday Star up here in Gauteng. Also, please join me on Facebook or follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Daddy #8, or drop me an email. See all my contact info on the screen after the show. Well, let's get on with the show. Welcome to my guests, Charmaine Teixeira, Principal of Wonderworld School, right here in Ferndale in Randburg, and welcome to Catherine Leroux, mom of a preschooler. Good to have you both on the show.
Thank you.
Catherine, tell us about your experience in terms of finding the right preschool. You've got a daughter, how old is she?
She's 5 years old. This
Okay.
being her last year at nursery school.
Okay, and you said the first time you went looking for preschool, you had a bit of a nasty experience.
I did have a nasty experience. Unfortunately, I wasn't aware of what I should be looking for within a school,
Yeah.
and I just went for the very closest one, the most convenient, and it looked perfectly fine on the exterior. And after a very terrible incident where they didn't call me, she had been quite badly hurt at school. In fact, her head had been cut open,
Yeah.
and they didn't call me at all to let me know that she had been injured.
So the first time you found out was when you picked her up later?
I had picked her up later, and while we were, she was very forlorn and quiet for the rest of the day. And while we were in the bath, I discovered blood in her hair. And when I approached the school and spoke to them about it, they told me I needed psychological help.
What?
So it was a bad experience altogether, and I just wasn't prepared to let her stay on, knowing that they weren't prepared to protect her, essentially.
Okay, yeah. In the beginning, you talked about the proximity of the school to where you live, and I think that's a common mistake that most parents
Very
make. A married couple, friends of mine, the mom and the dad had that experience where the dad was just interested in the traffic, and it was round the corner, so let's go there, and mom eventually persuaded him, look, that's not the criteria. But subsequent to that, obviously, you've now taken her out of that school, I presume?
Absolutely, yes. I took her out the very next day and put her into a school that I have known for many years, having attended the school myself when I was little. And it was just chalk and cheese. And obviously knowing what to look for, you know, after her being there for 6 or 7 months, it was obvious to me then.
And just, you know, after your experience, what advice would you give, you know, couples or moms and dads, you know, looking for preschools? Obviously, we've now spoken about the proximity. I mean, that should never be a factor.
No,
But,
no.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, there's just so much to a school that parents don't really realise when they walk in. You know, it might look gorgeous on the outside and have everything painted beautifully and pictures on the wall, but are there puzzles available to the children? Are there dress-up clothes? Is there a fantasy corner? You know, are the children allowed to get muddy and dirty? Is that acceptable? Is it not acceptable? These are the things we have to look beyond just what the school looks like. You know, there might be certificates, you know, adorning all the walls, but essentially, are the teachers actually there? Are they, you know, available to the children, you know, on a deeper level? So.
Okay. The reason I've got Charmaine on the show is because both my daughters, Hannah and Madison, have been through Wonderworld, and I happen to think personally that that's how preschool should be run. Charmaine, what makes Wonderworld different?
Well, I think one of the main reasons is the program that we use and the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
We're preventative rather than curative.
Okay.
We start with the baby unit. The baby unit, we do the neurocognitive exercises with them because we believe movement is very important. And then we have the pre-primary section where we do the perceptual motor program with them. And then we also have the primary school section.
Okay. Let's just go back to, you said neurocognitive. Neuro, I'm thinking brain, cognitive recognition. Just what
the
is that?
neurocognitive exercise, you know, many parents say, oh, well, my child is still a baby, I'll leave them at home, and once they're 3-4 years old, I'll put them in a nursery school or a pre-primary school. But, you know, the formative years are so important. Sure, the first 3 years, the children is like, they're like sponges, you know, and it's very important that they get stimulated correctly. And that is where the neurocognitive program comes in.
So give me an example of a particular stimulus or stimulative, if I'm using the right word, exercise, like a 3-month baby or like a toddler, whatever, and how that will impact on its development.
Well, for a child to be able to learn effectively and efficiently, there's certain skills that need to be developed. Language, visual, auditory, memory, and all these skills. I see it like a rope.
Yeah.
And each of the skills I've mentioned is like a strand of a rope.
Okay.
So all these strands need to develop, and it starts developing after birth. In fact, some people say even before birth, but it starts developing after birth with the correct stimulation. So when you choose a nursery school, you need to look for a nursery school who has a structured stimulating program for the children.
Yeah.
And so that all these, the formative and the skills are developed efficiently and correctly from the word go. I also believe in brain plasticity, so if it hasn't developed and they do start later, you know, we can rewire the brain, but that is far more difficult than wiring the brain correctly from the beginning.
Yeah.
So that is where we, in the younger children, the exercises we do.
Okay, now you used a big word there that I didn't quite understand. Brain plasticity?
Well, brain plasticity is really has to do with how the brain can think of a piece of plaster of Paris, you know, you can reform the brain if there are issues. For example, if a child had a difficult birth, there may be issues that need to be addressed. There are certain milestones that a child has to go through. If not, it will affect them later. So if the teachers are aware of these areas, for example, a child who doesn't crawl properly, it looks very cute if they just jump on their bottom, you know, around the room. But there's a milestone that hasn't been achieved that may affect them later, for example, with visual, for them to be able to see different, you know, visually.
It actually affects their development and growth motor.
Create the connection there for me. Tell me how crawling weird makes you not see, I mean...
Well, the cross-crawling is also, it helps, you know, that's actually a whole talk on its own.
No, but just quickly tell us about that, because I know there are parents sitting there who are thinking, little Johnny used to crawl sideways like a crab.
Yes.
No wonder he's drinking so much now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's various aspects, but the cross-crawling is very important for the children to wire the brain correctly, to be able to know, you know, use both sides of the brain effectively. And you'll see a child, for example, who doesn't ride a bicycle. You know, you think, oh, it's cute, you know, but it is important that they learn to ride the bicycle correctly.
Catherine, you want to jump in here?
I do. I wanted to ask, do you think that the rewiring of the brain, can that be done through play in the school? Is that
definitely through play, but also through specific exercises, you know. So what we do is, in our program at Wonderworld, is we zone in on the area that needs attention. The older children, we have different stations. We have balance, locomotion, eye-hand coordination, eye tracking. You know, we call them the different stations. To be able to develop the initial skills that the child needs to know. That you see, the language is really the umbrella of everything, all learning. And the child has to learn passively and actively. And people think if the child sits and watches TV the whole day, that it's TV has its place. But that you cannot say that the child's language develops by watching TV only. They have to have an active interaction with other adults, with other children, to be able to relate to them and be able to talk to others. And that is how their language is developed.
Catherine, I see you are sort of glued to what Charmaine's saying, but now I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Catherine's also a preschool teacher. Are you at a government curriculum based or also at a private preschool?
It is an independent school that I'm at, but we do follow many different methods of teaching.
Are these methods familiar with you, or you sound like you look like you're discovering new things here?
Some of it's new to me, yes, but our philosophy is really to learn through play. That is
absolutely.
That is where we feel it does cover the whole child. And that,
now I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to assume that we're all the sort of general age group, the three of us. I didn't grow up with that. I went to a preschool where lunch break or sleep time, we slept in a big hall, and one day I was right in front in the dark and a little rat walked across, and that was sort of my memory of preschool. But I think I sort of came out okay. I don't know what they taught me there because I can't really remember. And it's a bit scary listening to this because it sounds very scientific. I mean, when Charmaine talks about all these things, I'm thinking, oh my God, did we miss out? Or are we missing out? Are our kids going to be messed up if they don't go through this program? So what I'm trying to get at, Charmaine, is it, I mean, it sounds really scary if people miss out on this thing. Now, people are sitting there listening, thinking their kid is at a government-based school and they're not getting this kind of thing.
No, look, they do get it at the government-based schools. I think the difference is it's not necessarily sequential developmental. So it's not in a correct sequence. So, I mean, there's wonderful schools out there. Wonderful. But I think what sets us apart is the fact that our curriculum is sequential developmental. And what I mean by that is you can't expect a child to skip if they can't walk properly. And often, in many of the programs, they expect the child to skip, but the child has problems balancing. So all it is, it's what they do at schools anyway. It's just in a specific sequential developmental manner. And children, you're quite right, learn through play. So everything we do, they don't feel they're doing anything specific. And I think it's very important that the self-confidence is built up. And between the school and the house, we should be, the school is not a substitute for the house and for the parents.
Absolutely.
The school should be an extension of the home.
Well,
so I think that is very important.
Let's talk about the involvement of parents in this critical period, because at the end of the day, it's our responsibility. We need to get them into a good school. And as you say, it doesn't stop at school. We need to keep the stimulation going at home. What sort of activities or what sort of interaction should parents be thinking of, or should they be doing with their kids?
You know, if the fathers are involved, do ball games with them. Don't go out and buy the most expensive. They get a lot of that at a good pre-primary school. Go, if parents can just do ball games, soccer.
Spend time.
Even if it's just a half an hour or an hour a day.
Brain catch.
Brain catch, kicking the ball, soccer. That interaction with your child is of utmost importance. Read to your children. Join the library, let your children, they can choose their own books. Read to them. That is close interaction with your children by reading stories. But, not just reading the story, but reading a page and getting the child to relate what they've heard. So that by doing that, they're actually it's interactive. And it's also developing the sequential memory, which is also one of the skills, the preparatory skills.
Catherine, you're obviously a preschool teacher. I think just as a parent, I'm guessing that the selection of the teachers is quite a critical issue. Just going back to the horror stories that I quoted from my Facebook page, clearly there are good teachers and bad teachers and that kind of thing. What are the criteria? How does one become a preschool teacher? What did you have to go through before you became?
Well, I think it really boils down to not just being good teachers and bad teachers. I think it boils down to being a qualified teacher or an unqualified teacher. And I think now the problem is that schools can be opened quite easily and people are just employed without any qualifications. And essentially it is actually a degree that needs to be studied through one of the universities. There are other wonderful courses, which I've just recently finished, an ECD course. Accredited courses through UNISA, amongst other places. Okay. But also you need to know what to look for. And I think being the principal, you've got to have qualifications, you've got to know.
Yeah. Well, there's a principal and there's a teacher.
Yeah.
Charmaine, how strict are you in terms of your teachers? In terms
I
of
think it's very important. Yeah. You know, we also belong to the Rand Nursery School Association, which I, in fact, was one of the founders in 1991.
Okay.
Because I found that there was such a need for, you know, because you can be qualified for 10 years and have 1 year experience.
Yeah.
You can be qualified for 20 years and have 1 year experience. Because if you're not going to continuously improve yourself, go to courses, then, you know, what do you, you become stagnant. And that, unfortunately, is the case in many professions nowadays. So, especially, you know, teaching is such a dynamic profession.
Charmaine,
and
I'm
it's
going to have to
important,
interrupt you there.
You know?
We're going to have to cut to a commercial break. Don't go away. When we come back, we're going to look at some of the cutting-edge development in preschool education programs. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back. Well, I think we've established the importance of choosing a decent preschool, and after some of the scary experiences we've heard, I think it's imperative that we as parents take the time to research and visit a few schools before we make a choice. Catherine, I think your experience is, you know, testament to that. Charmaine, you know, we've spoken about your sort of attention to, well, not attention to detail, but just in terms of your whole approach to preschool. I know from my experience with my girls at your school, you've always keeping abreast of developments in the preschool, in the world of preschool. How do we compare in South Africa in general with developments in preschool education right now?
Well, you know, it depends on the school as well. But generally speaking, our curriculum is good. And but it
South Africa as a whole, our curriculum.
Well, depending the specific schools, you know. But it is important for whoever runs the school to be involved on the grassroots level with the preschool.
You're talking about when you say whoever runs the school, the principal or the management structure? The
management structure as well, so that they are aware. So just to get back to the Rand Nursery School Association, we give courses, normally about 4 workshops a year, and that is to make sure that the teachers are they receive various activities, they receive various workshops, so that they are abreast of what is you know, developing in the world.
And Catherine, as a parent, I'm just thinking, I think parents should be almost hold the teachers accountable or hold the school accountable. Ask the kind of questions that we're asking tonight. You know, what do you do, and how qualified are your teachers, and how often do they get you know, updates or you know, that kind of thing. So I think we've established that. What I wanted to ask you, just in terms of the selection process as well, because I know this is a big issue for everybody. I don't care how rich you are. Costs. Education is very expensive in this country, in my experience, and I've got 3 girls. Was that a factor for you?
It is a factor, of course, because you know, it isn't cheap by any means, and I've also been a single parent up until recently. However, I don't think you can put a price on education on any level. But with that being said, you have to look at the school. Where is that money going? You know, are they transparent? Are they showing you the figures? Is there a board? Can you join the board as a parent? Can you, you know, can you sit on it? And that is why I'm also so involved. I was able to join the board as a parent, be on it, see where the money's going, and it's not for gain in certain schools. Whereas previously at the school where my daughter was before, the principal was driving this unbelievably fancy car, but the children were only ever allowed to use one kind of art medium.
Charmaine, so what car do you drive?
I'm afraid I drive a condo.
Okay. All right, you say.
And my husband has a Mercedes.
Involved.
Yeah, no, I think that those kind of issues are important. I think you've got to
and I
question
think the transparency is so important, and also what is the parent involvement. So
But also I feel the parents should be involved.
Absolutely.
They should know what's happening. They should see the program. They should come to the parent evenings.
Yeah.
You know, we have little talks regularly so that the parents know what we're talking about when we speak about our program, so that they can go home and do, because as I said before, we're an extension of the home. The primary educators of the children are the parents.
Did you hear that? The primary educators of the children are the parents, you and me. I remember you talking about that, about us getting involved. I remember one night when you launched the PMP program, Charmaine actually made us do the exercises, jumping in and out of a hoop and spinning around, and it was pretty cool. I mean, the parents were doing it. So I think that's the kind of interaction you need at a preschool, or you need to be looking at that kind of thing if you are deciding to choose a preschool. Next year's around the corner, maybe you've got little kids that need to go to a preschool. If you haven't chosen one yet, I think go and see a few. One of the things that struck me when I went to Wonderworld and Hannah's primary school, Aurora, was when you walk into the school, there's an energy there. You can see the way the children interact with you. They come up to you, they greet you, they're just happy kids. If children are looking miserable and down, you know, the kid doesn't want to be there.
And the teachers must be passionate.
Absolutely.
I think that is where the issue is.
I mean,
teachers must be passionate. They want to be there. They want to teach. They haven't got the attitude, I don't know, I only work here.
Yeah.
You know, there must be that energy from the teachers as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, Madison, I had to take Madison out of the school last year, but she still talks about Teacher Rosie, which is one of her favorites, Teacher Marika.
That's right.
And I can tell you that they form real bonds.
That's right.
I mean, you probably experienced that as well with your kids.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how you let go of them at the end of every year. I mean, I'm already feeling teary about the end of this year. But it's true. And I also think, just touching on that, if you are visiting a school, if the teachers and the principal are allowing you to spend some time there and experience it before you send your children, I think that's also very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of just a brief tour and there you go, you know. I think, you know, you've got to actually see what the children do and get a feel for it.
That is why I started open days where parents can come in, because you know it's very difficult to, and also from a security point of view, you know, you can't just allow anybody to come in and roam around the school. So it is important that we keep that in mind, the security point.
Absolutely.
Charmaine, just quickly, talk to us about nutrition at schools, the feeding thing, because I know there were towards the end there was issues about you're not going to feed the kids anymore because of, I don't know, there was legislation, and also the medication, dispensing of medication. Tell us about that and the law and where we are with that, and what parents should know about that.
Well, I believe that sick children belong at home. We're not babysitters. We are education. We need to educate the children. So sick children belong at home. And that is why we stopped administering medication at Wonderworld. And our children are actually more healthy since then. Before that, we could have just as well been called Wonderworld Clinic in winter.
And it's
but now
illegal now to
it is
I was
illegal.
gonna say, yeah.
administer any medication.
Very
You've got to
much
have
so.
signed consent.
You have to have signed. We had that previously. We had a book where they used to fill in and sign, and the dosage not. But to me, it's important that sick children belong at home.
The legal issue,
it is difficult, I realise, for parents, but you know, they cannot expect to bring their children to school and infect the rest of the class every time. Then you never get rid of anything in the school. So, and from a health point of view, and you know, they aren't allowed to come to school if they've got chicken pox and all those children's diseases, you know.
The legal issue around the dispensation of medicine, I would imagine, is one of the things that I thought about is if the dosage is administered incorrectly, whatever, the school can be held accountable.
Yes, but you also find that parents overdose the children in the beginning, in the morning before they come to school. You know,
knowing that they're not going to be able to.
It's very clear because you know once the medicine works through, here by 10 o'clock the child has got a raise in temperature. So it is important that medication is. The dosage is correct, and I also find that parents sometimes go to two different doctors, and they don't tell the one doctor about the other doctor, and get two sets of medication that counteract.
Good grief!
So it is very important that parents realise that you know, when they go to the doctor and they get a medication, they must make sure that it's administered correctly.
The importance of nutrition and the right food that kids can expect during these formative years? How critical is that in terms of attention and all of that?
I think it's very important, and what we've done at Wonder World is we stopped providing lunches, and we have encouraged the parents to be part of the process of doing the nutritional. We also, you know, the pyramid of the different foods. We encourage the parents to put that on their fridge. You know, a 3-year-old can already be part of the process. Learn about it. It's a wonderful learning experience. And subsequently, parents have come back, because it's the first year now that we're not, and they said, you know, actually you're right, it's been a wonderful experience. My 3-year-old helps pack their lunch. They in any case have to do it for their primary school children, so it isn't an issue for them. And the children are now eating what they eat, they enjoy eating, but also the parents must make sure that they don't give them chocolate Easter eggs for breakfast. So, and the child knows already, you know, if they've got that in their pack, we'll give them, because if the parent has packed it, we'll give it to them for an afternoon snack rather than for the breakfast. So it's been a wonderful experience with the children and they can tell you already, and they look at the pyramid and they say, okay, I'm eating a protein now. You know, so in the class we also have the pyramid.
On a practical level, though, what I've found as a single parent, and you could probably relate to this, this is before you changed that rule, it was very reassuring for me to send Hannah and Madison to Wonder World knowing they're getting good nutrition and good food, because there's so much going on in our lives, especially for single parents. We don't have the time to worry about that. What do you think about this whole feeding scheme and having to feed your own children?
Well, I think it really does. It all stems from home. I mean, if a parent doesn't have those kinds of habits at home, it's not going to be passed on to the children. So often, and while you were talking, I think a lot of the time, the school it's more beneficial having the school provide the snack, because then at least the children are actually getting some fruit or veggies or whatever it is. But then at the same time, parents have got to be informed, and you've got to be educated about how important it is. So we provide a snack, but also the school day does finish at 12. So, and it is, you know, fruit and crudités and things like that. So,
excuse me, Charmaine, going back to the title of the show, how the development first 7 years affects adults, affects us in our adulthood. Is this just, you know, a quote that has survived the centuries, or is that actually real? Can you see what has been manifest, or can you see what happened in your first 7 years manifest as an adult? Does it go through?
Well, it's not just what happened during those first 7 years, it's also your character.
Yeah.
You know, if you read your children's first reports and you look at them now, you'll say, oh my word, absolutely, it's the same person. You know, so the character doesn't change, and you must also, as teachers, you must be aware of the different characters. You can't expect a child who won't speak in front of others. You can't force them now to go and stand on the stage and speak in front of a whole group of people. And if they don't, then suddenly there's something wrong with them. That's not true. Yeah. That's their character. And you cannot expect them to do that. So you need to be aware of your children, their character, and you need to focus on that as well. When a new child comes into the class, for example, you need to know who you can get to take that child around and show them the class and show them the school. Because there's social interaction is of utmost importance, you know.
Yeah. Catherine?
Their personality is fully developed by the age of 5.
Okay.
So that is their personality. And if you're going to chop and change schools or you know, really have disruptive formative years, it is going to affect them invariably. So.
Oh, that's very interesting. Their personalities are fully developed at the age of 5, so Madison's not going to change. She's going to have to put up with this for the rest of her life.
Well, that is why I think from a parent's point of view, it's so important to set boundaries, you know, at an early age, without actually affecting their self-confidence and their self-worth. But they need to know that they need to work, they need to function in certain boundaries. For example, a little boy, there's socially acceptable behaviour and unacceptable behaviour. To go and wee in the garden at school is quite acceptable at home, but that's not acceptable at school. So that's a social boundary that needs to be set from it's cute for some people, you know, that happens, but it's not socially acceptable behaviour. So that's the type of thing that parents play a major role in setting boundaries. And also with if there's problems between father and mother, we also encourage parents to go for parenting programs. Because let's face it, all the professions in the world, you get trained 4 years, 3 years, you know, you have to do a degree. However, with parenting, we don't receive much
I think that's why
training.
Shows like this are so important.
Absolutely.
If you need more information or you want to become a better parent, please get in touch with me. I'll put you in touch with my guests and they can obviously provide more information. But we're running out of time, but we still have some time left. I wanted to touch on this particular issue, which I thought was very important, especially when Hannah left, is your school readiness test before they graduate. Tell me about what goes on in that test and also the importance of, listen to this, academic readiness versus emotional readiness. Because sometimes your kid might be a rocket scientist, academically, but emotionally they're still 4 years old or whatever.
Yes, I always say if the child is emotionally and socially not ready for grade 1, then don't send them. Intellectually they can still catch up, you know, and to learn the various skills that they still need to know. But emotional, social readiness is very important. School readiness must also not be seen as a crash course before they go to grade 1. It starts from birth, you know, and the skills that they need to know starts from birth. They have to learn that. They have to be, the environment needs to create it for them to be able to learn all the skills that they need to know. So in the school readiness test, we look at the social, the emotional, we look at a lot of the perceptual skills that they need to have mastered, so that they can enjoy the learning journey. That's what it's all about, is to be able to enjoy the learning journey, not just be able to write an exam for that year and to be able to pass
theory,
it.
It's
far more than that. They must be able to experience, have a positive experience because let's face it, we learn that when we stop learning is the day we die. So,
Catherine, we've got about a minute left. What is your take on getting the balance right between emotional readiness and academic readiness?
Well, I do. I totally agree with you. I think it stems, you know, it comes from if the school really just focuses on the whole child, you can't go wrong. And I mean, that is social, physical, you know, mental,
normative,
absolutely, it's, you know, spiritual, it's absolutely everything. And if they are doing that, you're just preparing them so perfectly.
I remember my experience as a kid. I went to preschool. Now, my birthday's in December, like 4 days after Christmas, so you can send presents. And my mom got me into school at the age of 5, into primary school. So I only turned 6 at the end of that. And looking back now, after the experience that you've been talking about, I realized that I definitely wasn't emotionally ready. I was academically ready. I coped with it. I sort of adapted and, you know, scraped through the first couple of years and caught up eventually. But emotionally, I wasn't there. And I think that is really important. Even though your kid might be of school readiness age, be aware of their emotional, the state of the emotion at that time, and then evaluate that in terms of whether they're going to cope with other kids that are maybe a little bit more advanced. Because I think that social peer pressure in that at that stage of their lives affects you. I mean, I've always mentally been catching up because the kids were a little bit bigger than me. I used to get beat up all the time in high school and stuff like that. So anyway, that's about all we have time for tonight. Time flies when you're having fun. Remember, you can get all my details on the screen after the show. I think this is a critical issue we've been discussing tonight, very important. Your little ones need to get the right foundation. And as I said, if you want to get in touch with my guest, drop me a line. They are the experts in the field. They know what they're talking about. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you next week, same time, same place.